Hey guys, it's me, Jody Hand, Mrs. Hand Painted, and in today's video I'm going to show you how I turned this sketch of an Easter bunny into this painting, and I'll be showing you some techniques using a Filbert Grainer brush to do fur texture and grass. So paint along with me. Here is my sketch that I did last week of my Easter bunny. And I got some daffodils and some Easter eggs and grass here, and I will share a link to that sketch on my blog, and I'll put a link in the comments for you if you want to paint off of my sketch. I'll have that available for you. And I'm just going to set that back here on my desk as a reference. I had transferred my sketch over to my watercolor paper. I'm using Artiste cold press size 9x12, and I used a water-soluble graphite pencil just to transfer over just the basic outline of it. I didn't do all the little details on the flowers and the bunny or on my eggs. I just did the outlines of that so that I could go back in and paint that. And then I just kind of erased a little bit on some of the spots that were a little dark. Oh, little hairs on there. Some of the brushes I'm going to be using today are my Princeton Velvetouch brushes. I think I'll be using these round size 4 and 8 and a 1. And then I will also be using this Princeton Select Artiste brush. It's the Filbert Grainer in a 1/4 inch size. So I'll be using that to try to do some of the fur texture on here. All right, and the steps I'm going to do the bunny first, then I'll do the flowers and eggs, the writing, and then by the time the eggs are dry, I should be able to go in and do my grass. I'll also use that Grainer brush, hopefully, for the grass texture. Alright, so I'm going to be using my Daniel Smith watercolors today. I'm going to try out some of my new colors here. Alright, I think I'm going to paint this bunny kind of like a grayish color. We'll try. Maybe with a little bit of brown and have some pink ears on the inside. Alright, so I'm going to start from the feet and work my way up. Alright, I decided on doing a gray, and I think I'm going to mix my own gray using Ultramarine and my burnt Sienna. Find a cleanish spot on my palette here. That was some cobalt blue. I made a bunch of Easter eggs in another video. That. I want more of a gray blue color here, not more on the blue side than the brown. There we go. Alright, so I think I'm going to have him kind of go from a gray to a brownish color, and he's going to be kind of gray along the bottom, coming into some brown, and then he's going to have more of a gray face and gray ears. I put a little bit of color there, and then I'm just using some water to just kind of spread that color around. I don't want it to be very dark. And then I'm just doing a wash on this, just like on another rabbit I painted. I have posted that video recently. I'm going to go in and add the texture for the fur after. This leg is coming from behind. Here's his chest. I'm going to let that dry just a little bit before I do this leg. So I'm going to move this one back here, and I'm just going to do where this curve of his leg is. His foot is tucked in behind. And I get some water and just spread that color. And then he'll be a little bit darker here right under his head, where his chin would be. We have the color fade down from there. And if that's not quite dry, I would just leave a very, very thin line between there so that that doesn't bleed together and you don't lose the definition of his foot. But you can always go back in on a second layer after that dries. And here I get a little bit of blooming here from the water. Just going to blend that out. And I want to add just a teeny bit of brown in there. I'm going to get a little bit more of this burnt sienna light mixed over here to the side. I don't want too much water in that. I'm going to add just a little brown around the edge of back leg here. Just get that all to blend in nicely together. Okay, so there is the base wash on his body. I'm going to go ahead and move to his head and his ears. And I want his nose area here to be a little bit darker and just around his mouth. And then a little around his eyes I want to be kind of more white. And then he'll have darker going up from here. So I'll just start right there and then I can blend that down. His nose, a little definition there. And so you don't get too much water on your brush, you can dab it on the paper towel here. And I did draw these little flowers, and I'm just going to kind of go around that. I guess I could have done those before I did the rest of the face, but too late now. If you would prefer to do those flowers before you paint in the face, that would be something that you might want to try. And it's mostly just water here around the eye so that I don't get too much of that pigment there. A little brown in there. And just continue blending that gray into his face until you get a nice even blend. Don't have any sharp edges. And then we'll move on to the ears. And then this ear is showing the back side of the ear, so we're not going to have a center on that ear. Like the other ear will have a little bit of a pink or a peachy color for the center. So this one, I'm just wetting my brush and then just spreading that color around. Just make sure you don't have too much water on your brush so you don't have any water pooling up. And then the second ear, make sure you're leaving that area in the center so that we can do the pink color in the middle of his ear. And just kind of blend that into his head on that side where the flowers are not covering it up. And I'm just going back over a couple spots. Just wanted to hit a little bit more. And I'm taking a little bit of yellow ochre and my Quinacridone rose to make my peachy color for the inside of his ear. Just add a little bit more pink to that. I want that to be a little more pink, not as much orange. And you could certainly just use the Hansa yellow light that I was using, so you're not introducing another yellow. In hindsight, that's probably what I should have done. That would make a nice peach color as well. And then once that's dry, we'll go back over and add some of the fur texture to the ear. And so I had taken some Hansa yellow light there and I kind of watered that down a little bit to do my daffodil petals. And I'm just going to do a first layer wash over the petals of each of my daffodils and then that bud that I drew. All right, I'll let those daffodils dry and I'm going to move on to the eggs. So here I've taken some phthalo turquoise and added some water to that to make a lighter blue shade. And I'm going to do just the first layer on this egg here. And then after that dries, I'll go ahead and add a pattern on my Easter egg after it's dry. And like I said, I'm using a phthalo turquoise here. I'm going to do a blue, a yellow, and a pink egg. So taking my Hansa yellow light I just used for my daffodils and do the next egg. And for the pink egg, I'm just using the same peach color that I mixed up for the inside of the bunny's ear. And that's just my first layer wash. Over these, I'll add some more details over the top of the egg after these dry. Oh, I forgot to do his tail here. He's going to have more of a white tail, so I'm just going to do the little bit of edges on with this gray I made up. It's starting to separate out a little bit. I'm going to use my Filbert Grainer here and just very lightly give that some little fur textures. Just blend that a tiny bit on the base. There we go. Well, okay. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and do the details on the face and do some fur textures here. So using my same blue-gray color that I made, I want to do some more shadows along here around his neck and just going down on this leg here. So give myself a little bit of texture here where his chest is. Go ahead and use just the straight side of that, just to give some little toes. So on his face, I wanted a little more fur texture up here on the front. Coming from his nose. And then just a little coming up from his eye here. And then we'll go out from the edge of his ear here. One thing I will note with this Grainer brush is that you do have to keep reloading it quite a bit because you don't want to have a little low on my piston here. I'm just going to keep adding some fur texture here just to create some shadows on his face and on his body and wherever you feel it would need a little bit more shadows or texture. Just making sure around the edges where he looks fuzzy, going around the edge of his ears here. And then I'll do a little bit longer strokes here on the back of the ear and on the body just to show some longer hairs. You do want to just do mainly little short strokes with this if you're going to do it for fur because he has very short hairs. And you don't want to have your brush too loaded with paint so that it stays in those nice little fine lines. If you have it too much water on your brush, you'll get blobs instead of the fine little stroke details. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my round 8 brush here and getting some sap green. I'm going to do the leaves for the daffodils now and the stems. And then I'll use that same sap green to do my grass. So just doing a long stroke here with my round 8 and putting those leaves. I have a little bit of a leaf coming up from behind the flower. And daffodil leaves are kind of like a long grass blade looking, so don't have too much leaf detail to do on these. Okay, so that's going to be black, white. I'll do kind of a golden eye. I'm using Quinacridone Deep Gold, and that's just a new color I got. I wanted to try it out. You could use yellow ochre, or you could give him a green or a blue eye if you prefer. So I'm just doing that colored part of his iris, and then the center will be black with that white highlight. And then I'm going to outline the eye in black and do some eyelashes details. All right, so just doing the center of that eye and make sure you leave that small white space for the highlight. All right, and here I'm just adding a few little lines on the eye just to give that a little bit more of a detail. All right, so the next step would be to do his nose, mouth, and his whiskers. So I'm going to just draw those two lines to give that look of that triangle type shape. That's his nose. And I'm using the ivory black again here. And I'm just referencing my drawing here because I've kind of lost my pencil lines since that first layer of paint went on. And I'm going to take some of my gray and I'm just going to blend that in a little bit just to make that a little bit darker at the tip of his nose. Just kind of blend in with my black. All right, and taking that black again and just making the little dots for where the whiskers are going to come from on his cheeks. And I'm still using my size 1 round brush here, and I'm just going to water down that black just a little bit and get very thin and make some very thin lines coming out for his whiskers and just have a little bit of variation in the direction they go. And then they'll be a little bit shorter on this other side because it's showing from the back, they're further away. And have a couple come out from behind his nose that are not coming from the cheek part that you see. All right, so while I also have that little brush out, I'm going to do the daffodils on his head, and using that same yellow that I used for my other daffodils, I'll do the petals. And you could do really any flower you wanted on top of the head, or you don't need to do flowers at all. You could omit that and just have his fur. And just use a little green for some leaves. Okay, so here I am moving on now to the centers of my flowers, and I'm using a little bit of Hansa Yellow Deep, And then I'm taking a little bit of this Pyrrol Scarlet to make an orange color for the center. So I took the Hansa Yellow Deep and I did the base of the center cone. And then while that's still wet, I'm going to take a mixture of my yellow and my scarlet to make a deep orange. And I'm going to do that top part and do a small wiggling motion, I guess, to make that waviness. So just filling that in, and then I'll go over the top to add that little detail. And I'm taking a little bit of that Hansa Yellow Deep, and I'm just making some detail lines across my petals. Here, just outlining them a little bit, and then making some strokes going the length of the petals, just to add a little bit more detail to those. And just do the centers of the flowers and a little bit more detail on the flowers on his head. So the next step will be to put the details over our eggs, and I'm using the same phthalo turquoise that I did my wash with and my round size 1 here just to make a little zigzag pattern on my blue egg. I'll use the same Hansa yellow light to do, I think I'll do some stripes on this one. And I'll just vary the width of my stripes a little bit. And for the pink egg, I'm going to do a gradient on this one. So I'm going to, I think I'm just going to blend in some of that same coral color that I had. And then I'll take some of the Quinacridone rose. I'm going to switch to my round 4 for this actually, to blend that in with some water. And I'll start more of the peach color at the top and blend into a little bit more of the Quinacridone rose. And I'll just blend that together and be very careful not to touch the edge where your yellow egg was so that doesn't bleed. I'm just going to blend that color up and Just want to do kind of a little bit of a wet in wet. Just get some water on your brush and just blend that color around. And if you want some other ideas on how to decorate some of your eggs, I have another video that I did with 11 different designs for Easter eggs. You can click on the link that pops up, and that'll direct you to that other video, give you some ideas on some Easter egg designs you can do. Okay, and I'm just going to add a little bit more detail with my round 4 here on the daffodils, going back with that Pyrrol Scarlet and Hansa Yellow Deep mixture that I had, just to add a little bit more detail on the cup part of the daffodil in the center. Just darken that up a little bit. And I just want to add a little bit more detail to my leaves of my daffodils. So I'm just taking my same sap green and just adding another little layer over the top just to define those leaves, and just putting some lines across the leaves just to define them a little bit more. And you can tell which leaves are in front of each other, and just making sure that the edges are not one big blob and we actually have separate leaves on the daffodils. Right, for this next step, I'm going to do my Happy Easter, and I just wrote this in cursive, and I'm going to use my size 1 round brush and some Quinacridone Rose to do that. If you wanted to use a brush pen or just completely omit this part, that would be fine. I'm just trying to get a little more practice doing some brush lettering with paintbrushes and watercolor. And like I said, I just wrote this out in cursive with my pencil, and I'm just going over the top of that. If you wanted a little shortcut and you're not happy with your handwriting, I would suggest something that I do quite a bit is to find a font that you like, and just type that out, your phrase, in whatever font that you like, and then you can trace that onto your watercolor paper using your Sunny Window or a light pad, light box setup, and you can trace that font and then go over the top of it over your pencil. That's just one kind of handy way. It also helps you with sizing if you're not sure about what size of letters you need to fit in there. It's just one little trick that you can try if you're not really happy with your handwriting, but you still want to do fancy lettering on your paintings. Right, now that that lettering's done, I'm going to move on to my last part, which is my grass, and I'm using my 1/4" Filbert Grainer and the sap green, and I'm just going to do some strokes in a very similar manner I did for the fur. Maybe just make them a little bit longer and varying in direction slightly. I'm going to go around the base of the eggs and around his feet, and just kind of vary the spacing and the direction I have of that, and doing quick strokes with and keep reloading your brush, making sure you don't have too much water so you don't end up with big blobs. This might be something helpful to try on a separate sheet of paper if you're not super confident in this. I'm still learning this. This brush is still pretty new to me, and I'm just trying it out, and so far the results have been pretty good. So I'm just adding in a little grass here behind the flowers as well, just to give a little bit more in the foreground as well. And I wouldn't go too crazy with the grass, just want to have a little bit of detail and not too thick. And I just wanted to blend and soften his eye just a little bit. I thought it was just a little bit too sharp looking compared to some of the rest of the bunny. So I'm just softening the lines around my eye just a little bit with my size 1 brush and a little bit of water. And I just want to add a couple more little dots on his cheek right there, just to even that out a little bit. I had a few less on that side. And just add a couple little more whiskers here too. And now I'll just take a look and see if there was anything else you might want to add to yours. If you want to add some more fur texture at this point, or details on your flowers or eggs. I'm going to call this done. And if you like this painting and you want to share yours with me, I'd love to see it. You can use my hashtag #MrsHandPainted on Instagram, and you can share it with me there. Thanks for watching.